Hey everyone, you're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat, and I am your host, Jay Scherr, and I am super excited today. I've got a fantastic guest on the show with me. This is actually my guest's second appearance on the Business Minds Coffee Chat radio show. He is a husband to Teresa, a proud father of 4 and a grandfather of 6. He was born in Germany. He's lived all over the world, and he moved to Flagler County in 2016. He earned his bachelor's at Florida State University and a master's from Troy University. He served in the U.S. Army for 23 years and retired as a lieutenant colonel. And when he's not working, you'll likely find him out in the wilderness, hiking, camping, and spending quality time with family. Please welcome the Flagler School's Chief of Operational Services, Dave Freeman. David, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're right. I really appreciate getting to come back and tell you a little bit about my journey, and just it's an honor.
Absolutely. Well, I am super thrilled to welcome you back and to dig deeper into the conversation. So, just to frame our conversation, the last time you were here, for those who may not have heard that interview, we really went deep on Dave's personal life, his upbringing. We talked about family. We talked about mindset. Lots of really interesting things that we talked about, all related to Dave and Dave's personal life. Part of that conversation, of course, also touched on a significant experience that Dave was about to leave on. So just to kind of summarize, and Dave, if I missed something here, please let me know. But you left on March 16th for a 6-month warrior hike of the entire Appalachian Trail, 2,200 miles, winding through 14 states from Georgia to Maine. You were one of 20 veterans participating. This is the Warrior Expeditions, a veteran nonprofit outdoor therapy program that helps veterans transition from their wartime experiences through long-distance outdoor expeditions, and lots of incredible things that come out of that experience. So is that a good summary?
Yeah, that's good. The Warrior Expeditions, not only do they do a hike, a through hike of the AT, they also do a paddle of the entire Mississippi River. They do also a bike across America, basically starting in Washington, D.C. and ending in Washington State. So there are around 400 combat veterans. You have to be a combat veteran to qualify, that applied for those 3 expeditions, and they took about 35 to 40 vets.
Okay, 35 to 40.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we had our initial conversation, you were about to leave for that experience. And one of the things that I had asked you at the time was how you were preparing yourself for that experience. So first, had you ever done anything like this before?
I had done some section hiking. I think I'd mentioned I had done about 200 miles of section hiking with friends from either church or school, here in Flagler County. A couple guys from Flagler County. We had gone up for a couple days and done 40 to 50 miles. So overall, probably about 200 miles of the AT.
Okay. And how did and some of this we're rehashing, but I want to set the stage here. How were you preparing yourself differently for this trip versus some of those sectional hikes that you had done?
Well, physically, it's a lot more intense. I mean, I was giving myself 6 months to complete the AT because I knew it would take that long. Most people, it's either between, if you're really moving, it's 4 months, and it's 4 to 6 months. There's a time at the end of the trail where you have to be at Mount Katahdin if you're going northbound, that they closed down Baxter State Park. So you have to be done by October. So, and it doesn't usually open up until April or May sometimes. So there's a very short window of opportunity either to get, if you're going north, to get to Katahdin, or if you're going south to start up there and come back south.
Okay. So let's just talk then about the expectation for what this trip was going to entail for you, what this experience was going to be compared to reality. So, were there any differences between what you imagined this being and what you imagined for yourself, how you were going to be able to navigate and be physically ready and etc., compared to the way it actually panned out?
I would think that, or say that the physical aspect was just making sure that I was prepared enough to start the journey. And just the coordination part of it was, just trying to figure out how do you get resupplied, because you're responsible. I was responsible for my own resupply. Nobody was doing that for me. So I had to figure out, okay, from this point to this point, it's going to take me 4 days to do it. I'm going to carry enough food to get to this point. Then I'm going to hike into town, or I might hitchhike into town to get resupply and then come back on the trail. Just the logistics of doing that. When I started, the expectation, I wasn't sure how I would do that. But then as you keep doing it, day after day, month after month, it becomes a little bit more easier. One of the great things with my trip, it was sponsored by Warrior Expeditions. They have a support group that sign up to support the veterans. And about every 70 miles or so, there was somebody that I could reach out to. I had a spreadsheet that I could look at and say, at this mile marker, there is this supporter. And I could reach out to them several days prior and say, hey, I'd like to come in for a homestay. And I would like to shower and do a resupply and, rest. And then they would respond back to me and say, yep, I'll pick you up at this point of the trail and we'll take you in. And it was just an awesome experience. The support network is probably the envy of other hikers on the trail, because they're out there supporting the veterans, and it's just amazing the people that I met, and somebody that would open up their home and really give you the keys to the car. I mean, if you needed it to do what you needed to do to succeed in your hike, and then put you back out there to continue hiking.
That's amazing. So, what was one of the lessons that you learned along the trail? So I'm sure there were a lot of different things that you were, taking from that experience, but one of the most valuable lessons that you learned through that entire experience was what, if you had to summarize it?
Just the way that I look at people, and how that they are wanting to help you. I mean, not only the support network from the Warrior Expeditions, but, just everyday people that you would run across. Either it could be a hiker, or it could be somebody that might have hiked the trail last year that wants to come out and do trail magic. And Jay, you and I talked about trail magic as kind of unexpected food or drinks that somebody is putting out there to help the hiker as they're coming along. But that's probably the lesson I learned, is that people are really good in heart, and they want to help one another.
So let's talk about trail magic for just a moment. So, we talked about that obviously offline a little bit, and when you think about that, unexpected food, unexpected drinks. I mean, you even mentioned to me that there were people that were cooking the hamburgers or hot dogs, or just these are random people. These are not people who were part of this organization, right? These are just people
Exactly.
who have been through an experience before, and this is maybe something that was done for them, and they wanted to look for a way to be able to give back to another generation
Yeah.
of hikers, let's say. What did that how did that make you feel first? And then secondly, have you thought about how you can apply that same philosophy or that same mindset to your work?
Yeah, it was a great experience. You would run into people that would, like I mentioned, would be cooking hamburgers or hot dogs or eggs or pancakes, depending upon the type of day. And they were doing this year after year. And why were they doing it? Either they were doing it to help hikers. They lived in that area, and they, the hiker community is part of that community, or they were hikers that maybe through hikers that had experienced that in years past, and so they want to come back and give back to other hikers like what was given to them. And I had a lot of time to think on the trail, um, and I was thinking, well, how can we apply this in my job, or how can we apply this in our community? How can we have flagler magic? Where you make an experience in whatever you do, make it so good that people want to come back and help others that are, doing it now. And I haven't figured that out yet. I'm going to talk to our team and see how can we do some type of magic experience for others because we've been treated so well.
Yeah, and I think if you can capture the feeling that you had, how meaningful it was, because it goes beyond the act of someone providing sustenance, right? It's everything that went into it. There's so much more to it that creates a ripple effect. So you think about how that really made you feel, and how can I bottle that and figure out how to repurpose it and be able to create change within a team, within a community, those sorts of things. Because, it kind of goes to that saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. And all it takes sometimes is one person with one act of kindness, of generosity, of magic in this particular case to make significant change. So I love that. That's awesome. So I want to go back for just a moment to mindset and the mental preparation in addition to the physical preparation, right? Because there's two completely different aspects. They certainly work in conjunction with one another, but talk to me just very briefly about the mental training that you did leading up to this. Is there anything in particular that you worked on yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it got to be throughout the journey. It was physical, but there was a mental aspect to it as well, that you had to keep your mind active. And I would get asked the question frequently, why are you hiking the Appalachian Trail? And, I had multiple reasons why I wanted to hike. One of them was it's always been a desire of mine. Another was that I wanted to be able to use that outdoor therapy to think about my relationships with others in my life, my relationship with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, my relationship with my wife, with my children, with my grandchildren. And that gave me an opportunity to do that. So that was the mental aspect.
Mm.
I had a lot of time to think. I would try to do a daily devotion. I had a guy that I follow that whoever I was hiking with at the time, and if I had service in the morning, I could download the podcast, and then we would hike together, and I'd play the devotion, and then we could talk about it.
Wow.
So I did that with a couple of buddies of mine, um, and just being able to I listened to a lot of books. I prepped myself by downloading some music that I liked. So when I was doing those uphills that were pretty insane physically, I could get my mind on something else and focus on that to help me with the physical aspect.
That's amazing. I love that. So, Dave, we're going to hit pause on our conversation. We're going to take a brief break to thank our amazing sponsors. My friends, don't you go anywhere. You're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat. We will be right back. All right, we're back. And again, you're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat, and I am in the studio today with my very special guest, Dave Freeman. Man, what a great conversation we're having so far. So, for those who are just tuning in, I would encourage you when this episode comes out as a podcast, go back and start from the beginning because there's a lot of good information packed in there already. But we're going to keep the conversation going right now. So, Dave, before we took the break, we were talking about really the physical and mental aspect of the adventure that you just came back from. And I was really, we were honing in on the mental aspect of it, and you were sharing some of the things that you were doing to keep your mind active. And, it really gave you obviously a lot of time to think, and you were using it, to use your words, you were using it as outdoor therapy to really help you think about your own relationships, spiritually, your relationships with your significant others, and listening to books and listening to music. And I really think that's amazing. Since you have now been through the experience, was there anything in particular that you learned about yourself that maybe surprised you, or something that you didn't know before you left for the trip?
I was not sure I could do the entire trail, for one,
Okay.
so I learned that, the planning aspect of it is pretty important. How you plan out your food and water resupply throughout it. I had done, as I mentioned, done some section hiking, so I had an idea of what it was like. There were a lot of folks and a lot of warriors that had never done any hiking, so they had no idea. So I knew at least what I was getting into. But as far as knowing something that happened maybe that I wasn't expecting, there were a lot of things that happened that I that I was really not expecting, but I was able to, with the group, either with the group of warriors or with other hikers, be able to, get through those, either the situations or, find a friend or find a supporter that could help out.
And I just want to make one point. When we were talking offline, I had asked you the question as to whether you are more of a, let's say, introspective kind of being outdoors on your own, or do you prefer to be in groups with other people? And you had mentioned that you kind of do, some things on your own. That's kind of the direction that you would typically take, but you also, community was built here, right?
Yeah.
Purpose was created here, and there was a shared purpose. And each person that was on this trip, obviously you probably have developed some relationships with some people that you didn't know, that maybe you wouldn't have come across if it had not been for this particular experience.
Yeah, the AT is a very social trail. So, as you mentioned, I feel that I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert, but my friends the fellow warriors would probably tell you otherwise, because every time I would see somebody on the trail, either if they were passing us going the different direction or I was passing them because might be hiking a little faster, I would always stop and say, "Hey, where are you from? What's your trail name? Oh, how'd you get that name?" Because the trail names are just kind of crazy out there.
What's your trail name?
My trail name was Sherpa, and
Sherpa.
I got that in a section hike. Another buddy of mine was having problems carrying some of his equipment, and he was ready to quit. And I said, "No, you're not quitting. Let me have some of your stuff." And so I got got the name Sherpa.
I love it.
But the trail names were pretty wild. You know, something wild that happened while I was out there. When I would do these interviews, I would talk to them and I'd say, okay, where are you from? And they say, Florida. Well, whereabouts in Florida? Well, Orlando. Well, whereabouts in Orlando? And they'd tell me, and I said, well, I went to high school in Orlando during my junior year. What high school did you go to? Well, I went to Lake Highland Prep. And I said, well, I went there. You know, and I would tell that it was a lady, and I said, but you're way younger than me. And she looked at me and she said, try me. And I said, well, I'm 63. And she said, well, I'm 63. And it turns out we were classmates. So I met two high school classmates on the AT that, you know, I had no idea they were hiking. It was just, you know, a small world.
Amazing. That is so amazing. So we just brought in another special guest on our show today. How about it? We've got two special guests here. So I'm going to bring on to the show the host of Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. Yes, I am talking about the one and only Dr. Amy Cooper Smith, the owner of Amethyst Wellness. Dr. Amy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. So the reason why I asked you to come on the show today was, interestingly, I listened to your show this past Saturday when you had your husband on
Yes.
with you, which, by the way, that was an outstanding show. And you were talking all about some day trips day hiking trips that you have coming up on the Appalachian Trail. And when Dave and I spoke, and I knew Dave was going to be coming back, who just came back from a 6-month experience hiking the entire Appalachian Trail, 2,200 miles, I thought, how cool would it be to have you come on and maybe ask Dave some interesting, pointed questions about what you're preparing for, and maybe he can provide some guidance or some mentorship or some feedback. So with that kind of framing the reason why we're all here, I'd love it if you would ask maybe one question first. Let's kick it off. What would you like to ask Dave?
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on your trip. That's so amazing, and I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Now, one of the things my husband had agreed, he says he was forced, but he agreed to accompany me on some day hikes on the Appalachian Trail. And eventually we would like to do the whole thing, which of course is going to take a long time. But, you know, for the listeners, a day hike is when you just meet at a point, you go out for the day, and then you come back in and sleep in a hotel or something like that. So we have a trip planned. And as we were talking about our preparations, we realized we had some questions. And I'll start with, what do you do if the weather turns suddenly and you're stuck in a lightning storm up in the mountains?
Well, when you plan your day hike, you should know where those shelters are along the
Yeah.
trail. So the shelters are normally every 10 miles or so. So if you're in a storm, you know, you first of all, you need to make sure that you have the equipment to keep you at least dry. And then I would head to a shelter, or, you know, as soon as you could.
Right.
Yeah.
Like-
Or, you know, a lot of times you're just going to hike in the rain.
right. And the rain
You
is
never
not,
you never did that, right?
Oh no, they say no rain, no pain, no main.
no rain.
Oh.
Oh.
All right. Next question.
Next question. What do you do if you encounter a bear?
I encountered 4 bears while I was on the trail, and it was amazing. I was really excited when I saw them. I was hiking up a hill, and it was coming around a turn, and up in the distance, probably about maybe 100, 200 feet in front of me, I saw a mama bear and 2 cubs. I immediately stopped. And I was watching the bear. I was reaching down. I have a little fanny pack that I use to keep snacks and my phone. And I was reaching in because I wanted to get my phone. I wanted to get a picture of him. And as I was doing that, either the mama bear smelled me or heard my zipper on my fanny pack open up. And she looked up, saw me. She started running. The cubs went up the tree. When they saw mama running, they came down running after mama. You know, most of the bears that you see, they're black bears. They're not going to
Yeah, I've heard
mess
that they
with
can
you.
be pretty shy.
Yeah.
Now, if you have one, let's say that for some reason, seems aggressive. Were you instructed to make loud noises, make yourself big, or to just kind of
No,
back away?
you would want to make yourself big,
Yeah.
loud noises. I use trekking poles. You would start
Ooh,
clanging your trekking poles and making yourself big, holding your hands up, and yeah.
okay.
Interesting.
Excellent. Questions answered. I like it.
Next question.
So, you are an older hiker.
I am.
Now, my husband is about to turn 60, and he had some concerns about, being a little bit more mature and starting this journey. So, did you have any specific challenges related to just being older?
I don't know if it was a challenge. When I first got on the trail, I was, I'll be honest with you, I was kind of surprised with all the drug use on the trail.
Really?
Yeah. And, I'm older and there were a lot of young people, but that seemed, as I hiked, that seemed to kind of fade out. And I don't, I assume that the more you hike, the more you got to be dedicated to do it.
Right.
And I saw very little, maybe the second half. But as an older hiker, I'm 60, I turned 64 on the trail. I gave a lot of those young folks the run for their money. I mean, I was in shape and I could hike, I could keep up with most of them.
Awesome. Did you have to pay a special attention to your recovery and give yourself that little extra grace?
I did. I mean, as an older hiker, you're not going to recover as fast as the younger folks do. I did take a joint medication and I took a daily supplement vitamin. I used a lot of Advil, Advil, and then some Tylenol. I would, Advil in the morning, Tylenol in the afternoon, Advil at night, and I was doing that regime for almost the entire time.
Were you eating protein bars, things like that?
I would try to do protein. I was burning about 4,000 calories a day.
Okay.
And so I was trying to get a lot of calorie intake. I started as a breakfast meal. I would do honey buns, which you'd look at the honey buns and you'd look for the highest calorie intake. I could find them that had 750 calories. And then I'd get a stick thing of donuts and those were about 500 calories. So that's like 1,000 calories right there for breakfast. I did that for a while. Then I got tired of honey buns and switched over to the oatmeal. And I did a lot of protein bars and tuna and, the chicken salad with tortillas. And then for the dinner meals, I found that the freeze-dried meals were the easiest and they could get you the most protein and the most calorie intake. But a lot of people do the Knorr meals, noodles or rice, and then put protein in it. But the freeze-dried meals were so much easier, and I could, there's some of them with over 1,000 calories and 42 grams of protein.
Nice.
Amazing.
They're a little bit more expensive, but
Sure.
yeah.
But it covers the macros that you need.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so Dr. Amy, you had an opportunity to ask a few questions. I'm sure that you've got a lot more there. And but we are going to need to wrap up our conversation. I want to thank you, Dr. Amy, so much for popping in and spending a couple moments with us. Dave, I want to thank you so very much for being here today and sharing more of your experiences. I know that there is more to this that we could talk about, but we'll save that for another time. At least from now on, I know I'm going to be calling you Sherpa. So I want to thank you again. And for all of you, thank you so very much for tuning into Business Minds Coffee Chat. We will be back next Saturday morning at 8:30. And until then, my friends, keep learning and growing and keep doing the work to reach your potential. Take care, everyone.